Hear me out or make me strong.
I was born and raised in Korea, and then I moved to Guangzhou, China. That's where I attended middle and high school. But I went to international school, so it was like American education system, which naturally led me to the States. Korean military service is basically an obligation that all Korean guys have to go for at least a year and a half because South Korea and North Korea are in a war right now. So everyone goes to the army, so it's not as respected or honored as it is in the States.
Personally, I'm grateful for my military service. I was an Air Force officer. My rank was first lieutenant. It's much higher than normal soldiers. So I was a platoon leader and I was in charge of leading my platoon. Normal soldiers spend about 22 months, but I spent 3 years and 4 months because I was an officer. I volunteered. The main purpose of maintain military is to keep the defense capability toward a foreign threat.
So this is something that dates back to the Korean War. Why do Korean men have to serve in the military? The most obvious one is to defend South Korea against North Korea's aggression. Or at least that's the spoken reason. Number two, more ideologically, it is an anti-communist state. In order to have an anti-communist state, you have to have a military that is anti-communist. And number three, I would say, is to control the people in terms of monitoring the people, educating the masses, and proving to the US that, hey, look, we have a great population that is anti-communist, anti-North Korea, and pro-US. And that always looks good in terms of public diplomacy and international diplomacy with the US.
Talking about the military experience, people think there's so much physical suffering. But for me and many of my roommates, think it's more of a mental suffering, mental pain, because first of all, we lived in this closed loop for 1.5 years, and it made it even worse because of COVID. And many of them saw their family 3 times over that period. We would say they're violating my human rights. Why am I not allowed to use my phone that I bought with my own money? People thought I was ignoring their texts. One of my main duties is just gatekeeping. So I just have my gun, have my helmet that can block bullets, and just stare at the horizon just in case North Koreans come. And I'm like, what if I just run away right now? Nobody could stop me. Or even sometimes I think about when we're in the tank, nobody can stop us, right? What if we just drive away right now? I thought about it. Whenever I look at the fence, I just think about it's possible.
When I was growing up, all of my dad's friends would get together and they would always talk about the military. So I grew up listening to military stories. There's a joke in Korea. Korean wives hate 3 things about their husbands when they get together with other husbands. Number 1, it's talking about the military. Number 2, it's talking about playing soccer. Number 3, it's talking about playing soccer in the military. I think the government understands that there is a problem with mandatory military service. It takes time away from men who are studying at a university, right? You lose the momentum. If you speak to a lot of college students, they leave after their freshman year, they come back, they're supposed to be a senior or a junior, but then they're a sophomore again, but then they're 3 years older than most kids, right? So they feel old, they feel out of place. Not only that, they haven't been studying for the past 2-3 years, so they don't feel like studying again.
One thing I had to sacrifice was my college education in the States. So I had to pause my college education my junior year to go to the army. I obviously didn't speak much English in the army. My friends were gone and I just didn't remember anything about accounting, my major. I learned driving pretty recently, like a few weeks ago. Drove on the interstate for the first time. It was scary. It was weird because like I was so used to like seeing people driving tanks around me, and then like now I have to drive these like small vehicles. Like,
Yeah, the big thing is time, because I mean 3 years in 20s, I think it's much more valuable than 3 years in 40s. For example, 3 years we can finish another degree and get another job, so that is a big sacrifice.
to think about the fact that none of us really chose to go to the army in the first place made it even worse. It was not our choice. We got paid $500 per month. I would have earned more working at like McDonald's. So like, honestly speaking, I wouldn't have gone to the army if I had a choice.
Most of Koreans will not voluntarily go to military if it is not mandatory.
It's already a very unbalanced situation in Korea. They say mandatory, but that mandatory is a very tricky word. They're also trying to get rid of the military altogether. For example, like BTS should not be allowed to go to military service. If you win a gold medal in the Olympics, you are exempt. If you're the only child, you don't need to go. If you have a medical exemption, you don't need to go. All these loopholes and exemptions exist today, which never existed back then.
People die in the army, and it affects other people, affects their family. During one training, one of the soldiers died. After that soldier died, I was pretty depressed. After a tiring day and lights are off at 10 p.m. Everything's like silent. I'm lying on bed. That made my insomnia even worse. Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, this happens pretty often. Death, injuries, and it's sad that this is the reality in our country.
In terms of discipline, I suppose that's something good that comes out of the military. But the question is, do Koreans today, living in Seoul or any metropolitan city in Korea, do they really need like discipline to become a better person? I think living in Seoul is difficult enough. Let's not forget the number of soldiers who commit suicide. Let's not forget the number of soldiers that run away from the camp. Let's not forget the number of men, before they go into military, they injure their body so that they don't have to go to the military. And let's certainly not forget all of the sons of the congressmen, congresswomen in Korea who avoid going to the military.
People usually say that if you don't go to army, you will not become a real man. That expression tells us that the experience in military teaches us a lot as a grown man, because the military is a kind of educational institution. They teach us how to deal with and how to live in a big organization. So in that aspect, that saying is, I think, right.
I learned to persevere more, like try hard for stuff. I had 50 people in my company and I had 10 roommates. And they had like different ideas, they had different religions, life purposes, and talking to them allowed me to be more open to differences.
I think the idea is North Korea has not attacked South Korea since the Korean War. So for 70 years, they've been training their men to be soldiers to kill and defend South Korea from North Korea. But there has not been a single attack from North Korea. So why are we continuing these exercises when there's no immediate threat from North Korea? So instead of wasting these young men's lives, let's cut it down. For those who are serious about the military, like they want to join the Marines, they want to join like the special forces, let them do that. But for the rest of the population who don't even care about North Korea, why should they go through this torturous 3 years for nothing?